Please subscribe to my channel and like my video. Thank you for your support. Curse of Mountain R. Josh, Emily, and Mark were three young climbers from America who planned to climb Mount Ararat. This climb was not just an adventure for them. It was also an opportunity to prove themselves. However, from the very beginning of this journey, they were surrounded by an unsettling atmosphere. Emily, the stories I've heard about this mountain make me uneasy. There are rumors that it's cursed. Josh, those are just legends. We came here to climb, and nothing will stop us. During their flight to Turkey, an elderly woman caught Emily's attention. The woman kept staring at them with fear in her eyes and quietly whispered to Emily, "Don't go to that mountain. It's cursed, Emily. She's just a scared old woman, right?" Mark, of course. Don't let your imagination run wild, but the woman's words planted a seed of doubt in Emily's mind. When the group arrived in Istanbul, they began exploring the historical sites. In an antique shop, Emily found a map with ancient symbols on it. These symbols appeared to be from Mesopotamia, and the map had Mount Ararat written in one corner. Emily, this map, it's like it's trying to tell us something. Josh, those things are just for tourists, Emily. Let's move on, but the map wouldn't leave Emily's thoughts. When they camped by Lake Van, strange noises from the lake woke them up in the middle of the night. They noticed something moving within the mist. Mark, what are those sounds? Is someone in the water? Emily, maybe it's just an animal. But this feeling isn't right. This event left the first chill on the group's minds. They began to sense that something was wrong, even before their climb had started. When they arrived at Mount Ararat, the villagers told them stories of climbers who had gone missing years ago. Especially the tale of a group of climbers who disappeared and whose bodies were never found sent shivers down the young climbers' spines. Villager, there are things on that mountain. Those who go up never come back. Josh, those are just rumors. We're prepared. Don't worry, but the fear in the villagers' eyes continued to linger in Emily's mind. The first day of the climb went smoothly. The weather was clear, and the paths were well defined. However, as they approached the summit, the weather began to change. A thick fog suddenly descended. Emily, where did this fog come from? It wasn't in the weather forecast. Mark, it must be something unique to this mountain. Let's not panic, but this fog made it difficult for them to find their way. They began to lose their sense of direction. As they progressed up the mountain, they noticed that the paths had disappeared. The tracks were gone, and they no longer knew which way to go. Josh, we've lost the path. But we must find a way out. Emily, maybe we should turn back. Something's wrong with this mountain, but turning back was not an easy option. The fog had covered every path. When they spent the night in the middle of the mountain, whispers in the wind woke them up. These whispers were in an incomprehensible language, seemingly ancient. Mark, these sounds. It's like someone is trying to tell us something. Emily, this isn't just the wind. It's like a warning. The whispers carried by the wind fed the fear growing inside the young climbers. As they approached the summit, they saw a frozen human figure in the snow. But this was not just a figure. It was a demonic entity. This entity stood motionless, as if waiting for someone. Josh, is that a person? But how could they survive in this cold? Emily, this demonic entity. It's like it's waiting for us. Why is it here? Double quotes. As they circled the entity, trying to determine if it was truly alive, its eyes suddenly opened. When the demonic entity's eyes opened, the group was thrown into a panic. The entity took a step toward them, then vanished into the fog. Mark, this must be a nightmare. It can't be real, Emily. We need to get out of here immediately. This entity is following us, but the path back had disappeared into the fog. The entity suddenly began to move, leading the young climbers after it. They had no choice but to follow, but it took them deeper into the mountain. Emily, we have to follow it. Maybe it'll lead us somewhere. Josh, this could be a trap. But we have no other choice. The entity was drawing them into the depths of the mountain. The entity led them to the entrance of a cave and then vanished. The cave was filled with symbols from the Mesopotamian era. Emily immediately realized that these symbols were cursed. Emily, these symbols. This is the source of the curse. Mark, this cave might be hiding the secrets of the Mesopotamian people, but these secrets also harbored dangers. While exploring the cave, Josh suddenly disappeared. Emily and Mark tried to find him, but couldn't trace him. In a panic, they became separated from each other. Emily, Josh, where are you? Please answer. Mark, something's wrong in this cave. We have to find Josh, but the cave had drawn them into a labyrinth. Emily found herself alone in the depths of the cave. The cave was like a labyrinth, pulling her deeper with each step. She searched for a way out, but every path led to another dead end. Emily, I need to get out of here. But which way is right? Fear began to take hold of her mind. Josh, in another part of the cave, encountered the dark demonic entity. The entity whispered something to him in ancient Mesopotamian, and Josh's mind became completely clouded. He no longer knew what to do. Josh, these voices. What are you trying to do to me? The entity fully took control of Josh and drew him into the darkness. Mark had remained outside the cave, but panicked when he realized that Emily and Josh had gone missing. He tried to find them, but it seemed as though the cave had swallowed them up. Mark, we need to get out of here. But how? Fear broke down all of Mark's courage. The cave was drawing him in as well. Emily found a sacrificial altar in the deepest part of the cave. This altar bore the traces of ancient Mesopotamian rituals. These rituals explained the curse that had fallen upon the mountain. The symbols and ancient inscriptions on the altar revealed how this curse had come to be and how those who attempted to climb the mountain had been sacrificed. Emily, this curse. This place is truly cursed. This altar has been the end of everyone who came here. As Emily examined the symbols on the altar, she better understood how the curse had strengthened and what had happened here. The demonic entity was waiting here to take over those who arrived. Emily, I need to escape. But this curse will take me too, but escaping the cave would not be as easy as she thought. As she circled the altar, a hum from the depths of the cave began to echo in Emily's mind. The demonic entity was drawing closer. Mark had hesitated to enter the cave where Emily had disappeared. He had stayed outside but didn't know what to do. He wanted to enter the cave to find Emily and Josh, but his instincts told him it was too dangerous. Mark, I can't just wait here. But I don't know what will happen if I go inside. On the one hand, he thought of turning back, while on the other, he was tormented by the guilt of abandoning his friends. Finally, he gathered his courage and decided to enter the cave. As Emily wandered around the altar, she shuddered at the sounds coming from the dark corners of the cave. These sounds seemed like some kind of ritual or ceremony. The demonic entity was after her, and Emily could feel it. Emily, who brought me here? Why am I here? At that moment, the demonic entity emerging from a dark corner of the cave froze Emily in place. This entity was slowly approaching her. Its face resembled ancient Mesopotamian masks, surrounded by a dark aura. Emily, this must be a nightmare. The demonic entity drew closer to Emily, and the sounds from the depths of the cave grew louder. Emily felt it was impossible to escape. When Mark stepped into the cave, the cold and darkness inside immediately took hold of him. With every step, it felt as though the cave was drawing him further in. The darkness and silence were playing tricks on his mind. Mark, Emily, Josh, are you here? In response to his voice, he heard only the echoes of the hums from the depths of the cave. On one hand, he tried to overcome his fear, while on the other, he tried to understand what was happening inside. But as he moved further in, he began to feel the presence of the demonic entity. Emily found herself face to face with the demonic entity in the depths of the cave. As the entity approached her, images of ancient Mesopotamian times flashed through Emily's mind. These images depicted the terrible rituals and the curse that had taken place there. Emily, this entity, it's part of the curse. It's trying to take over me. The demonic entity was about to touch Emily when she suddenly pulled herself back and ran to another corner of the cave. But this escape did not stop the entity. It continued to pursue her. As Mark progressed through the cave, he noticed Emily's footprints. He followed the tracks to find her and reached an altar deep within the cave. This altar was the place Emily had discovered earlier. Strange symbols and ancient writings surrounded the altar. Mark, these symbols. Did Emily see them? But he found no trace of Emily around the altar. He could only feel the presence of the demonic entity emerging from the dark corners of the cave. This entity was waiting to take him over as well. Mark, this place is truly cursed. I need to get out of here, but I can't leave without finding Emily and Josh. Emily ran through the cave, trying to find a way out as she fled from the demonic entity. But it seemed as though the cave was leading her into a labyrinth, offering different paths at every corner. Every attempt to escape drove her deeper. Emily, this cave won't let me go. But I can't give up. Her mind was filled with fear and despair. But she had to fight to survive. As Emily fled, she heard Mark's voice. Mark was searching for her too. With all her strength, Emily ran toward Mark and finally found him. As they embraced, they could feel the demonic entity watching them from the dark corners of the cave. Mark, Emily, I found you. We need to get out of here. Emily, but Josh is still missing. And there's something in this cave. It won't let us go. They both steeled themselves to find Josh and escape the cave. But the demonic entity had no intention of letting them go. Josh suddenly appeared from the depths of the cave. But Josh was not the same. His eyes were empty, his movements strange, and he seemed soulless. Emily and Mark tried to talk to him, but it was as if Josh's mind was trapped in another dimension. Emily, Josh, what happened to you? Can you hear us? Josh, this mountain, it has taken us. There's no going back. Josh's words filled them with dread. Josh was no longer the Josh they knew. The curse of the mountain had completely taken over him. Seeing Josh's condition, Emily and Mark were at a loss for what to do. They had no choice but to leave Josh behind, a decision that filled them with deep guilt. But they had no other option if they wanted to survive. Mark, we can't save Josh. We have to get out of here, or we'll end up like him. Emily, but leaving him behind. It doesn't feel right. Torn by indecision, they continued to search for a way out. As Emily and Mark tried to find the exit, the demonic entity appeared once again. But this time, it was larger and more terrifying. The demonic entity was dressed like an ancient Mesopotamian priest, holding a symbol in its hand. Demonic entity, you cannot leave. The curse of this mountain will trap you. Emily and Mark were forced to confront the demonic entity. But this confrontation would push their spiritual limits. When the demonic entity cornered Emily and Mark, they retreated in desperation. But it felt as though the cave was closing in on them, preventing their escape. Every step seemed to lead them further into the depths. Emily, it won't let us leave. This mountain will keep us here forever. Mark, but we have to try. We have to escape. they both made one last effort to escape the demonic entity. As Emily and Mark fled from the demonic entity, they believed they had found an exit from the cave. But this exit did not lead them back to the base of the mountain. Instead, it took them deeper into the cave. There, they found one final altar bearing the curse of Mesopotamia. Emily, this altar, it could be the source of the curse. Maybe if we destroy it, we can escape. Mark, but can we take that risk? What if it only makes things worse? They both had to make a difficult decision. Destroying the altar might save them or destroy them completely. Emily and Mark did everything they could to destroy the altar. But as they attempted to destroy it, the demonic entity found them again and attacked. With one final effort, they managed to destroy the altar, but the demonic entity dealt its final blow to them as well. Emily and Mark disappeared into the depths of the cave as the altar exploded. The demonic entity vanished, and the cave began to collapse. But it was unclear whether destroying the altar had ended the curse. In the end, Mount Ararat was shrouded in silence. There was no sign that the curse had ended. The cave had collapsed, and the demonic entity was gone, but Emily and Mark were also lost. No one would ever know whether the curse on the mountain had truly ended. Final whisper. This mountain traps souls. There is no escape. The spirit of the mountain will live here forever. As the curse of the mountain continued in an endless cycle, the spirit of the mountain awaited new victims with every new ascent. No one could unravel the secrets of this cursed mountain, and no one could escape its curse. Thank you for listening.